I'm wishing right now that I had a fireplace and a nice cup of tea to be sipping on, but perhaps maybe you're lucky enough to be cozied up this morning as you watch the show, because we have traveled back again to Dade County, talking this morning with Donna Street, who is the president or chairman of the Dade County Historical Society. So nice to see you.
Nice to be with you, Julie.
You can tell a tale.
I can.
You've had us a little bit in stitches. For one thing, you told me that one thing a lot of folks in Chattanooga don't know is that you're a visitor in Dade County if you don't refer to Chattanooga in a certain way.
Yes. If we can tell immediately that you're not from here if you say you're going to town and you mean Trenton, because town is Chattanooga.
You say that Chattanooga and Trenton, Dade County in general really, have been connected in ways that most people don't realize for centuries, really.
Since the 1800s, 1880s, and around that time, the majority of people who worked in factories went to Chattanooga to work. We didn't have factories until the 1960s, and we had some that came and went, but the majority of people. So I was a teacher, and we would know. One of the teachers would come in and say, "I'm going over to town," and they going, "What are you going to Chattanooga for?" Because Chattanooga is town to anybody that's a native.
Well, we'll make Trenton be town for Chattanooga now. How about that?
Chattanooga needs to discover Trenton.
They sure do. This is such a neat spot, and our timing to talk, Donna, is very appropriate because you were telling me that Dade County became a county on Christmas Day.
On Christmas Day, by the act of the legislature.
So you are born and raised here. Your family's been in Dade County since when?
They've been on the census since 1840.
Okay, and yet you're always learning some new things.
Oh, definitely, we're learning new things. In the last year, we've learned that one of the great stories about the Civil War, and in Chattanooga especially, was about the locomotive that stayed there for so long. The general was there when I was a kid, and they finally gave it back to Georgia. But one of the things we just recently learned was that Andrews of Andrews Raiders was captured in our community. We didn't know it.
Right.
And it was all of the local historians went, that can't be true. And then we started chasing down some of the facts that our friend Doug Carson in Walker County has chased, and we found that he's exactly right.
It's an exciting time in Dade County right now because y'all been going through a renovation of your courthouse.
We have.
Which you're quite proud of, and it sits as a presence on the town square.
It does. It divides. It's one of maybe 3 or 4 courthouses in Georgia that divides a state highway. Most people, the people who didn't want to work on the courthouse, thought we should just get rid of it and make Highway 11 straight, but it wouldn't have been as easy as they think to remove it. And that building has so much good history that we want to preserve it and put some interesting things. We hope that our Alliance for Dade and the Chamber is going to host the Welcome Center as part of our renovation, which looks like it might be ready by the first quarter of 24. We thought it would be the last quarter of 24, but it looks like it might be ready by the first quarter.
You can't really go anywhere in this part of Chattanooga, Trenton, Dade County, and not talk Civil War history. You mentioned it with Andrews Raiders and Andrews being captured here. Something you were telling me, not all of it can be verified, but a lot of it can, is that Sherman, y'all get credit in Dade County, if you want to call it that, for Sherman firing the first shot. Is that right?
Well, for starting the first fire in Georgia. I mean, it's laughable. None of that was laughable, but the burning of Atlanta and burning all the way to the sea, as Sherman did, he had to end that war somehow, and it looked like that was the way. But one of the first things they burned in Georgia was our courthouse, and they did not burn it in September. They burned it in October and November as they were preparing for what became the Battle of Missionary Ridge. There were tons and tons of soldiers around here and all the way to Chattanooga. And the railroad, which was operating then, probably was one of the reasons that Sherman sent soldiers into Dade County.
You know, you walk around the downtown area and it's just the quaint square and businesses here, some old you can tell, some new coming in. And to think that once upon a time, you said there were 40,000 Union troops walking the streets?
40,000. Well, there were hardly any streets, but they came in from the Alabama end, from the Tennessee side, but the largest majority of them came across. If you were on I-24 and you saw Murphy Hollow Road, they came in through Murphy Hollow from Helltown. That was one of the places that they crossed the Tennessee River. And Hooker, a community that we have, is named because General Hooker's troops walked through Hooker, Georgia.
So within Dade County, there's Trenton. Name me some other pockets.
Okay, there at the Civil War times, or shortly after, we had 2 or 3 cities that were incorporated. One was Rising Fawn, which is south of Trenton. It also is the moniker for New Salem because the mail is still listed as Rising Fawn, even though there's nothing about Rising Fawn on Lookout Mountain. The other one is New England, which was an 1880s, 1890s planned community in the hopes that there would be a large mining community there. And we had, sad to say, one of our biggest historical assets is the convict lease system of Georgia, where people in Georgia, farmers and people, could lease convicts to come and work on their property. Really? And we had 1,000 of them at a time. Rising Fawn and New England and Coal City, were larger than Trenton in the 1880 census. They had more people. Trenton had about 700, and Coal City and Rising Fawn had over 1,000. Coal City is not C-O-A-L City, even though there was a coal mine there. It's C-O-L-E, and they named it after somebody who was the president of the Nashville Railroad system, and I think they were currying favor, trying to get some help. It was major politicians in Georgia that part of the Bourbon Triumvirate, Joe Brown and John B. Gordon, had connections to Dade County, big time connections. Gordon had a mine, the same mine that wound up being the camp for the convicts. He had owned that before 1860, and his family was listed as, his family was listed as living in Alabama, working in Georgia, and getting their mail in Tennessee.
What?
Which you could do very easily if you lived out on Sand Mountain on the back. He lived at Long Island. He was in the Long Island census, which is basically South Pittsburgh, and his coal mine was about a half a mile from his house, and then Whiteside was about a half a mile on the other side. So you could do all three. Do you know the name Plum Nellie?
Yeah.
Do you know that originated here, and do you know what it means?
I do not.
Plum Nellie was originated by a lady named Fanny Menon, and Fanny Menon taught art in a school in Chattanooga, but she had a summer place on Lookout Mountain at New Salem, which is address Rising Fawn. But she started a clothesline art show, which was called Plum Nellie, and our local Alliance for Dade has co-opted part of that name because it's such a Dade County name. Plum Nellie means plum out of Tennessee and Nellie out of Georgia, and the Plum Nellie is a very good way to put it. But I've discovered that Miss Fanny started the art show because she was a library lover, and one of the first things that appears in the Dade County paper talking about the Plum Nellie art show is that the money she was going to raise was going to the bookmobile for Dade County in the 1940s. So long history of educators and taking care of our library.
There's a lot of history here. There's a ton of charm here.
Absolutely.
And the new year would be a great time for you to come and experience it. So thanks for the fireside chat.
Thank you for having me.